What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 9 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Today's video is brought to you guys by Birddogs. And look, I know we're all searching for that perfect pair of shorts or pants that offers the best style, the best comfort, the best bang for your buck. Well, guess what? That search is over because Birddogs offers all of that and so much more. If you're looking for shorts, they have a ton of options with activewear, casual wear, or even beachwear. On top of that, their pants have a selection of khakis, joggers, and sweatpants. So what are you waiting for? Regardless of the occasion of the season, get yourself the most stylish, the most comfortable pair of pants with a built-in liner from Birddogs.com. And if you use promo code ADP today, you'll get a free rope hat with your purchase. Again, that's Birddogs.com, code ADP, and you'll get a free rope hat with your purchase. Make sure to check out birddogs.com, link in the description, and we kick off Week 9 on Thursday with the Eagles at the Texans. So for the Eagles, it's really easy here. It's A.J. Brown, it's Devonta Smith. That's kind of been the case for the majority of the season. But I will say in this matchup in particular, both these guys can be a little bit tricky. And sure, they have high upsides because the Texans defense is god-awful. But also the floor a little bit lower than I would like, because if this game turns into a blowout, like I would say a lot of people anticipate, then the Eagles could turn to running the football relatively quickly, and the volume might not be there for A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith. So with that in mind, I have Brown as a low-end wide receiver 1, probably a little bit higher in standard formats, and then Devonta Smith kind of low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. For the Texans, you see Brandon Cooks' name here with an asterisk next to it. No, he's not injured, but at the time of this recording, the NFL trade deadline has not yet passed, and Cooks has been the talk of a potential trade for a long time. So if he does move, then you take a chance on Nico Collins. I think it could be a decent dart throw, high-end wide receiver 3. If Brandon Cooks stays put, then Nico Collins, don't get cute with it. This offense can still only really sustain one fantasy-relevant wide receiver, and Cooks would be in the low-end wide receiver 2 category for me. Then Colts at the Patriots, one wide receiver apiece. For the Colts, Michael Pittman. Look, without Matt Ryan, I think this offense doesn't have the same passing upside, even though he was disappointing as their starter. I think he's a better passer than Ellinger. Now, Pittman with Ellinger, to me, is in that middle to low-end wide receiver 2 category. I wouldn't get too cute with Pierce or Paris Campbell. I don't think this Colts offense can sustain multiple fantasy-relevant wide receivers. Similar situation with the New England Patriots. Jacoby Myers has been a PPR stud. I think he's a solid mid-level wide receiver 2, but other guys afterwards, no thank you. They're also going to focus on running the football here. So just Myers and Pittman in this matchup. Afterwards, Packers at the Lions. This is an intriguing one because it could be a high-scoring affair. For the Packers, Allen Lazard, is he going to play? If he does, I would play him. I would start him, and he has the highest upside out of all the Packers wide receivers. But something tells me that he is probably going to sit this game with his injury as well, which is unfortunate because he's been a very, very solid play in fantasy when available. So if Lazard doesn't play, Romeo Doubs, I think, is a very solid start and really top Packers wide receiver. I think he can put up similar numbers to Lazard. I really do. And I would have him as a mid to high-end wide receiver too. For the Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, nothing new there. I have him as a high-end wide receiver 2. You get some touchdown success. He's in the wide receiver 1 category. And I do have Josh Reynolds as a start. And part of the reason is because TJ Hawkinson was traded to the Minnesota Vikings. So there's going to be some targets opened up here. And we've seen Josh Reynolds be that number 2 most consistently after Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's why I have Khalif Raymond as a sit. And I do think this, again, can be a back-and-forth game where both these teams essentially could put up 30-plus points. Sammy Watkins is a sit. I saw enough from him versus the Bills. No thank you, even if Allen Lazard doesn't play. Then Chargers at the Falcons. I'm only interested in the Chargers wide receivers here. Keenan Allen, He's had some time after the bye week. I think he should return to a high-end wide receiver 2 in PPR formats. Maybe after another week, he'll belong again in the wide receiver 1 category. We'll see. Mike Williams obviously injured, so I do think Josh Palmer still will have fantasy appeal if available. I would have him in the low to mid-level wide receiver 2 category, but I wouldn't start too many other Charger wide receivers because I still continue to believe that Austin Eckler will get a bunch of targets, a bunch of receptions. You could argue he could lead the team in receptions. For the Falcons, I'm sitting all the Falcon wide receivers. Look, sure, a couple of them had success here and there versus the Panthers, but this Chargers team is better. And neither of, whether it's Bird, whether it's Drake London, whatever it is for the Falcons offensively with their wide receiver position, none of them really stick out. None of them are consistent on a week-to-week basis. It could be one guy this week, another the next week. So do yourself a favor. Don't take a gamble with any of the Falcon wide receivers. Moving on, Bills at the Jets. You start Stephon Diggs. You start Gabe Davis. Similar to what I said about A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, I think this game could be a blowout. So the upside for both of these guys, while it is high because it's the Jets, the floor a little bit lower than we would like. Diggs in the wide receiver 1 category, Gabe Davis in the low end wide receiver 2 category. For the Jets, it's Garrett Wilson or bust. I mean, Zach Wilson isn't looking anybody else's direction. Elijah Moore, he's been the talk of potential trade, but it's not happening. I'm starting Garrett Wilson. I think he can be a solid mid-level wide receiver 2. Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, they are afterthoughts. They just don't get enough volume. So I am passing on both of them here. Moving on, Vikings at Washington. I'll start Justin Jefferson. I'll start Adam Thielen. Justin Jefferson, nothing has changed. He is a top 5 wide receiver every single week. Adam Thielen, I think his floor and his ceiling both drop with the addition of TJ Hawkinson. So that's tough if you're a Thielen owner, but look, maybe versus the Commanders, it won't matter too much, and maybe this being the first week for TJ Hawkinson, and considering how they utilized Irv Smith beforehand, maybe we're overblowing it with Adam Thielen. I'm on the, kind of on the side that TJ Hawkinson moving to the Minnesota Vikings, not as big of an upgrade as some others think. For Washington, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, I would start both of them. I think it's going to be a back-and-forth game. I think this, again, could be a higher scoring affair. Terry McLaurin, to me, mid to high-end wide receiver 2. Curtis Samuel in that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 category. I have him as a start because, look, even though kind of disappointing week in week 8, Antonio Gibson ain't going to have 7-8 catches every single week, so keep that in mind. Then Panthers at the Bengals. I'm only going with DJ Moore here. Again, I still believe he is boomer bust. Yes, he had a huge game versus the Falcons, but, I mean, some of that had to do with a end of the game 60-plus yard touchdown, so let's not forget that. The Bengals, better team than the Atlanta Falcons, but I still think Moore is a start. The other Panthers wide receivers, I mean, they kind of came alive. Terrace Marshall, Laviska Shenault, but I wouldn't go chasing the targets, not yet at least. Long term, maybe this is a good thing for Terrace Marshall, but right now, I wouldn't get too aggressive with it. Then for the Bengals, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Yes, the Bengals offensively had a disappointing showing versus the Browns, but Higgins, Tyler Boyd, both finding the end zone. Without Jamar Chase, I really like both these guys for the remainder of the season. To me, they're both high-end wide receiver 2s. Then Raiders at the Jaguars, and talk about a team that was disappointing, maybe no team more so than the Raiders last week, getting goose-egged versus the Saints. But I think they're going to bounce back here versus the Jaguars. Davante Adams, to me, is still a top 5 wide receiver. Worst case, top 10 wide receiver, still a wide receiver 1. But the other pass catchers on this Raiders offense, Hunter Renfrow, very big disappointment this year. Mac Hollins had a big week in week 8 in terms of volume, but that was a blowout. It was a weird circumstance. And if Darren Waller returns, those targets are going to be redistributed. So I am sitting both these guys here. Josh Jacobs will also be more involved in running the football. The Jaguars, I'll start Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. Yes, Kirk has come down to earth big time, but he's still getting the volume which you like to see. The Raiders defense not all that scary. Zay Jones, I think, is a decent, kind of dart throw, high-end wide receiver 3, but then I wouldn't get, again, too aggressive and add Marvin Jones. I have him as a sit. To me, he's still the wide receiver 3 for the Jaguars. Afterwards, Dolphins at the Bears, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, they are starts every single week. that's nothing new. They're both playing like top 10 wide receivers. For the Bears, you see a new name here, Chase Claypool. He was traded to the Bears, but this being his first week, I'm not going to get too aggressive with it. I still, think that the Bears can only support potentially one pass catcher. That would be Darnell Mooney. I thought about listing Darnell Mooney as a start, but I think there's just so many other wide receivers. Justin Fields doesn't necessarily go just to Mooney, and Justin Fields is still a run-first quarterback. Like, the success he's had in fantasy these last couple of weeks hasn't been because of what he's done with his arms. It's because of what he's done with his legs. And I don't think that's going to change all of a sudden. So, to me, a little bit too risky to be starting Darnell Mooney. Afterwards, Seahawks at the Cardinals. DK Metcalf somehow played last week. While he's on the field, you start him. Same with Tyler Lockett. I think they're both in the kind of boomer bust wide receiver 2 category. For the Cardinals, it's just DeAndre Hopkins. That's it. Yes, we said start Rondale Moore last week. That paid off big time. This week, I have him back as a sit. This is a divisional clash. It's a weird situation. Last time the Seahawks shut down the Cardinals. I wouldn't be shocked if it happens here again. I'm only trusting DeAndre Hopkins. I think Rondale Moore is a little bit too risky here. If the matchup was a little bit different, then I'd take a chance on him. But since it's not, I'm just going with Hopkins, who, to be fair, is a top 10 play. Then Rams at the Bucs. So Cooper Kupp, tough, gets injured in the last play of the game. Meaningless, position for him to be in because the Rams were being blown out by the 49ers, but the anticipation is that he will play. You really hope so for the, number one wide receiver in fantasy, or right there alongside Tyreek Hill. If he doesn't play, Allen Robinson is going to get a nice boost. I anticipate Kupp plays, but he's going to be less than 100%, so I think Allen Robinson can be a decent start here, but I would have him in the low-end wide receiver 2 category, high-end wide receiver 3 for the Bucs. Both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are high-end wide receiver 2s. I think that's going to be the case all season long. And then Van Jefferson, I know some people might be tempted. He's back. Kupp is injured, but to me, it's Kupp, it's Allen Robinson, then Van Jefferson, 2 boomer bust for my liking. Maybe if Kupp doesn't play, then you take a chance on him, but it's still too early for that. Afterwards, Titans at the Chiefs. Only one wide receiver I want to start here. That's Juju Smith-Schuster. And even with him, these last couple of weeks, he's had touchdown success. You take away that touchdown success, and those numbers look a lot closer to what we were seeing at the beginning of the year. And at that point in time, Juju wasn't producing. On top of that, the Chiefs traded for Kadarius Toney. So it's a situation where the targets, I think, are going to be redistributed here offensively. So I think Juju Smith-Schuster is a low-end wide receiver 2, could be in the wide receiver 3 category. But everything I said about Kadarius Toney, I still have him as a sit right now. His first game with the Chiefs. So it's a situation where we need to feel it out. We need to see what this offense looks like with that addition first before, inserting any of these other guys as starts. And then MVS, Michael Hardman, just too inconsistent. Then for the Titans, if Ryan Tannehill doesn't play again, this is a run-first team to begin with, but even more so with Malik Willis under center. I'm benching all Titan wide receivers. Then Ravens at the Saints. So Rashad Bateman is going to miss a couple of weeks. Devin Duvernay, I still believe, is the top wide receiver. Yes, I know Demarcus Robinson led the Ravens in targets this last week, but if there's one guy I would take a chance on, it's Duvernay. Don't get me wrong, both guys are going to be boom or bust, and I would probably have in the low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 category. For the New Orleans Saints, it's Chris Olave. That's been the case pretty much all season long. I don't care if Michael Thomas comes back. I don't care if Jarvis Landry comes back. He's the most consistent weapon, and I have him as a mid to high-end wide receiver 2. I don't care, again, what happens with Michael Thomas. Even if he does play, I'm sitting him. Just don't have enough faith in him injury-wise or consistency-wise. But with that, we wrap up our Week 9 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.